It is time for today's high-intensity tech training, and as always, your comments and questions are welcome in the chat window for live Q&A. It'll happen both during and after today's presentation. We are discussing cybersecurity trends today and the success stories that are found left and right. It's going to give you direct insight into what's actually working in today's high-risk environment. How about AI and machine learning integration in threat detection? The expanding data privacy regulations, what your clients are asking about. It's all here today. We welcome back Telarus VP of Cybersecurity, Jason Stein, along with a panel of experts from ECI, the leading cybersecurity provider for the first half of 2025. Jason and all, welcome back to the Tuesday call. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks, Doug. I'm doing great. How are things?
Fantastic as always. We're so glad to have you here. Still the hot topic of the year.
Yeah, I agree. Piling on to what you said earlier, artificial intelligence, number one, cybersecurity is a close second, and then securing artificial intelligence is, one of those things that we need to continue to focus on. Super excited to have ECI here. Justin, how come your headshot looks like a supermodel and the rest of us look like Beetlejuice got to us?
Because I'm too busy to go get professional ones taken. So I had to have my 13-year-old daughter take that one for me.
Nice.
So, I'm, as Doug mentioned, ECI, new to our portfolio, just been in the portfolio for a little over 6 months and already closed enough revenue to be our top supplier so far in the first half of 2025. Very excited for all the momentum that we have going on with you. I love that what you're doing, both from security, AI, as well as cloud. And it's really neat to see how quick you guys have blasted into our organization and worked with our partners so well. So kudos and thank you. Let's jump into it. Chandler, why don't you go to the next slide? Thank you. So here's the three things that are really resonating the most. First, you heard Doug talk about AI. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. I just got back from the RSA conference with Trevor Burnside, and we really saw not only on the billboards everywhere in the airport, all around the city, going into the booths, everything said AI. And it was fascinating because, not only is the market segment for AI $757 billion conversation according to Deloitte, but then you got, the market segment for just AI securities, a $31 billion conversation this year. AI is not new to cyber. We've been doing it for quite some time. 80% of organizations are looking to adopt artificial intelligence, but yet only 12% actually follow a framework, a roadmap, have an adoption plan. So Dylan, I know AI has been super valuable and important to you. How much is AI coming up in every conversation? And then how often are you seeing that when clients come to ECI that they're not prepared? They don't have a strategy. They don't have a framework. They don't have this roadmap.
Yeah, it's happening a ton, right? And I think it's exactly what you said, Jason, where everybody is aware that it's present and that it's moving quickly and that there's advancement being made day by day, but they're not necessarily sure in how to leverage it to improve their own business use cases. So I think that's where, as an organization, we're really driving that talk track with clients to try to highlight the different use cases for AI within workflows and different business processes that they're utilizing per vertical. Two, to really talk with them about the stages of adoption within AI. I think it gets confusing with how many different services and resources are out there that are referring to AI. So really understanding the difference between, what is Copilot, right? What is a Copilot agent? What is, a third party platform like Foundry or Bedrock or Blue Wave, and why are those different? And when do you leverage one versus the other? And what kind of investment should we make as a firm? So we're trying to kind of walk everybody through those conversations and give them a good representation of where we think they should be.
I love it. Thanks. Some of the top security things that we need to think about when it comes to AI is exactly what you said. We need to protect those large language models. There's a bunch of different ones out there. ChatGPT, Copilot, tend to be two of the top ones that people adopt. It's interesting because we were just talking to a university and they said, what we really struggle with is tenured professors who say, you can't make me put any type of security measures on my laptop. It's my laptop and I'm tenured. So, good luck with that. But then how do you protect the sensitive data that they're, allowing people to put onto their laptop and they're sharing with these large language models? We need to worry about top things like data masking, access controls, encryption, better monitoring and logging. We need to have better practices in place. Jonathan, Dylan, are these top priorities that you're seeing that are gotchas that people don't think about? Because let's face it, within the organization, if these 80% of organizations are implementing and adopting AI, it's typically driven by non-technical people, is it not?
I mean, totally.
Sorry, go ahead,
you
Dylan.
Go, John. No, you go. No, I'll go.
Just real quick, and Dylan, I think you'll have a little bit more insight here, but generally speaking, I think the important thing for any organization is finding a way to make something useful and meaningful accessible while sort of dissuading users from taking the path less monitored, if you will. So by providing users with a really good experience on a really good platform that can be carefully manicured to the experience of the organization's needs, that tends to draw people to, a function that is more secure, while it provides an opportunity to dissuade and even outright block or gatekeep other models, for example. And we've built products in this very light to be able to kind of support that philosophy.
Yeah. And what I'll add on to that too, right, is like outside of just AI, really with data storage as a layer, what we've been preaching for, the past few years and definitely seeing a lot more in the market is really like DLP management, right? And data governance and classification as a priority within organizations, either from like a regulatory perspective, trade secrets, right? Or, like PII, and just ultimately wanting to instill confidence within your end users. So AI in that way is no different, right? Like if you're leveraging generative AI, you still want data labeling, you want correct data classification so that the LLM itself isn't going to feed an output to a user who shouldn't have access to that data, but could be able to query it, right, or ask a question against it. So it goes back to like identity and permissions and having those correct permissions, and organizing it well through group-based policies and role-based access permissions, and then two, making a priority to label your data correctly, utilize a data governance solution, and make sure that's incorporated at whatever layer you're interacting with generative AI.
Fantastic. One of the other top topics is, when we start to think about Graham Scott and what he's doing in the advanced networking space, a lot of organizations are moving to, adopt more, SD-WAN, and they're really thinking about how, one, we need to put more security measures in place. 60% of enterprises are actually looking to replace VPN with zero trust in 2025. It's a $42 billion conversation. Biggest reasons: remote workforce. We have a lot of compliance. We have more cloud adoption. We need to make sure that we're enabling the partners as well as clients to get to the data that they need to. But, Jonathan, Dylan, when we think about ZTNA and zero trust, the zero trust network access, the zero trust architecture, I know you guys have a different product name for it, Zero Networks. How does that come into play? How much are we seeing this adoption rate?
I'd love to see more of it. I think that we're sort of in a post-COVID lens where much of our market presence was coming to an office 5 days a week, getting in front of a desktop, doing their job, leaving the office without a work device, maybe connecting to a Citrix or something of that kind, to stream some apps for remote working on the off chance that they were at home performing their daily tasks. But in a post-COVID world where everybody's sort of running around with a laptop, it's just not scalable to do traditional VPN in a sense. Obviously, in the security community, This is going back some years, but the Ronald Reagan anecdote, the trust but verify, has been invoked time and time again. And ZTNA, I would argue, is like a direct challenge to that concept. So don't trust but verify, don't trust anything, which is really the foundation of where ZTNA tools come in. I think in general, people are figuring out different ways to achieve a zero trust model on an increasing market share in SaaS and IaaS. So it's not the sense that you need, these full mesh networks any longer that are interconnecting different data sets in different places. It's really about kind of extending the network access, or the platform access to the identity, to the endpoint, just beyond having a credential that gets you access to a network layer.
Awesome. I agree completely. And, Vinay's point, it is becoming more virtual, less physical. So EDR, MDR, XDR, we have all these acronyms, SOC, SIM, we have, ways to, one, protect anything with an IP address, other ways to look at logs. It's definitely a big conversation this year. Most organizations are going to have EDR. They have some type of antivirus, some type of endpoint detection response. What they don't have is MDR. And what's interesting is this second bullet point, which says last year, MDR, managed detection response, which is that human element, adding that security layer on top so that we see everything that gets through and anomalies, was a 30% adoption. And this year, it's doubled. It's a 60% adoption. So, 80% of organizations, this is what's great about to everybody on this call, 80% of organizations are going to outsource at least one component of their cybersecurity. And most of the time, it's this, because they don't have the resources. They only have one or two resources. They're not security experts. Let's face it, anything that gets through all your security threats is something new that no one's ever seen before. So, Jonathan, how much are we seeing EDR, MDR, XDR, SOC, SIM being a part of this conversation? People saying, hey, we're not the expert. We don't have those experts. We need your expertise. We need your resources to help us.
Yeah, Jason, you hit the nail on the head. It really, the managed detection and response is really about the people, and those people come at a cost. So for small and medium businesses that can't really scale up their own security presence internally, outsourcing is the name of the game. In our business, we're seeing incredibly high attach rates of our security products onto our MSP business, where it's just incredibly complementary as a service. And, depending on what regulations you're under, it could be sort of mandatory. It's something that I think is scalable and necessary for really any industry, any size business, to be able to have the 24/7, 365 coverage. These are things and platforms that are outsourced for a reason. That attack on a long weekend, or a holiday where it's 3 a.m. and somebody is attempting to detonate ransomware on your network, or drop a reverse shell or something of that nature. You're not staffing as a small or medium business that resource to be able to watch those signals. And with these EDR, MDR, XDR products, it's all about bringing in everything into that single pane of glass. We want to get all data from all of the things from everywhere and make heads or tails of kind of what's going on in the big picture. So the people on top of it, absolutely essential. We see it everywhere. It has continuity through everything that we do.
I love it. So, Justin, let's pass it over to you. If you have questions, please throw them in the chat. We have a lot of really great content from ECI. So, one, I wanted to turn this into a fireside chat where we could talk about, what are you seeing, Justin? What's resonating? What are clients asking for? What are some of the things that we're having clients and our engineering resources come and rely on ECI for? We have a lot of things in the cloud that you guys are doing. You're one of the unicorns out there that can do cloud and security, passwordless, database services, CMMC, zero trust, which we've talked about, DLP, GRC. I mean, there's just so many amazing things that I think you guys are doing. Justin, tell us a little bit about what are some of the biggest differentiators that ECI does, and what does your stack look like, and why are you winning so much?
It's a lot of acronyms that you threw out there.
I know, you don't usually.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're doing pretty well, I would say, in complex organizations, right? So a lot of the time, TAs are coming to ECI looking for a little bit more maturity and scale over current vendors that the customers are working with, whether that's a mom and pop MSP that they grew up with, whether that's somebody in the channel already who's maybe not quite as global or doesn't have end-to-end services. They're leveraging our expertise with guys like Jonathan and Dylan, who are sitting in on pre-sales calls to help them map things out across the entire stack. So when you think of ECI, think of more of an end-to-end IT services firm. They're looking to have economies of scale built in, right? Cost considerations when you add multiple layers of service to your business. But it typically starts with solving for a simple problem. I've noticed a lot of people coming to us with generative AI questions, Copilot, ChatGPT. I've noticed a lot of people coming to us because they hear what Jonathan built with our XDR platform is exceptional. And a lot of conversations just start around that and building a proposal around solutioning. So it's been really great in that capacity. And we've been so successful because I think, I don't do much talking. Most of the talking is done by the Jonathans and the Dylans of the world. So it's been a really great journey so far.
Awesome. So give us a little background on ECI.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually our 30th year in business. We're founded in 1995. It's about 1,000 of us around the world, 18 global offices. You can see the locations down to the right side. Very busy, right? Over 35,000 end users on the SOC platform. One thing I like to highlight is we are private equity owned, which if you sell into the higher end of the mid-market or the lower enterprise, people like to know that we're a very financially stable and strong company, fully auditable financials. I think that that's very valuable when it comes to RFPs and RFIs. They want to know ECI is going to be in business for many years to come. And again, I think just to really highlight the scale, right, having delivery centers all across the US, as well as in EMEA, APAC, and EMEA and APAC specifically, really allows us to go after opportunities that not many other vendors within the Telarus channel can compete with us on.
That's great. Chandler, let's go to the next slide and dive into the product set. So this is your portfolio, well, a snippet of your portfolio. Tell us a little bit about some of these offerings. And I love to see that it goes across all the advanced solutions.
Yeah. So the reason we threw this slide together, right, it's a little jumbled up from a wording perspective, is we wanted to give everybody a true understanding of the scale of our business. So each one of these bullet points you see, whether that's in the cloud or infrastructure, the cyber and compliance, the data and AI, or even the managed IT, we're happy to schedule follow-up calls, which you can work with me to accomplish, to do demos and deep dives into these particular solutions. But for the sake of time, we wanted everybody to get a feel of the comprehensiveness of our portfolio of services. So I'll kick it over to Bricado to run through the cyber and compliance, all of our security services. When he's done with that, we'll kick it over to Dylan to run through what we consider to be digital services.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, generally speaking, as a business, our focus is to make sure that we're weaving security through really everything that we do, taking what's like typically known as a security through layers approach. So while the managed XDR is our flagship offering with our 24/7 365 SOC, we do provide managed EDR services. We're principally a reseller of SentinelOne. Next gen firewalls, so your Fortinet devices, your Palo Alto devices, Cisco, Meraki, etc. Micro segmentation. So we work with a couple of different vendors. We very briefly touched on Zero Networks a moment ago, which is going to be ZTNA, but also host-based firewall management. An often overlooked thing, in my opinion, where folks are not necessarily fortifying the endpoints firewall, making for challenges when, the EDR doesn't necessarily pick up that reverse shell or something of that nature. Zero Networks and host firewall management really come into play there with not blocking stuff just coming inbound, but also going outbound. So it's a really, really great piece of kit. Advanced email protection, we're a big integrator of Proofpoint. We play in the EOP space. We're also a big integrator with Abnormal, which is a relatively new AI-driven email security model. On top of the tools and the tech and the cool stuff that I could talk about endlessly, we also do have sort of the governance and risk, the GRC program, which is going to be wide and comprehensive in and of itself. We're able to deliver VRAS, vulnerability management services, through that program, as well as phishing and end user training with tabletop exercises and simulated phishing campaigns. Just going down the list here back into my space, we do offer dark web monitoring services for employee identities specifically. Security assessments on particular IT assets, and all of this. I think like the last bullet here is in the spirit of using a different scale that we're not necessarily developing. So whether it's CIS or NIST or something of the like, we're always trying to drive to build our standards and best practices on what conventional industry best practices tell us.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and talk a little bit about digital services and what we're doing. So the way to think about digital services is really it's all custom application development and related infrastructure hosting needs for that application development that we're doing, right? So that can fall into really anywhere in the project lifecycle, starting from requirement gathering, right, which we'll typically do as part of a pre-sales, unless it's like a really large data project or something like that. All the way to a managed service offering, right, where we can handle 24/7 response, SLAs for remediation as well, and do ongoing development and build a product roadmap and collaborate with you to continue to build new features and enhance the solution overall. So really everything in between. For our main domains, that's we're typically working with data, whether that be data integrations, data engineering and data pipelines, generative AI, which ultimately becomes the end product of a data pipeline, and use cases around generative AI and incorporation into applications, custom web apps, custom mobile applications. We still see those, as well as cloud infrastructure and cloud engineering too, right? Mostly for complex use cases around containers and Kubernetes. As well as like managed service offerings and infrastructure as code. But realistically, all of those domains are different areas that we help in. And yeah.
I love it. So I wanted to expand on a couple things. So first, Jonathan, let's talk about the cloud. We're seeing a lot of things being moved to the cloud. Virtualization's key. We need to protect the data. We have so many people accessing the data. We have users, we have employees, we have customers, we have all of these tool sets, and we need to protect that data. So, one of the things that's fascinating is you're doing a lot of things for protecting that. But when you came to our engineering summit, we started talking about DBA. We don't have a deep bench of suppliers that do database administration services. But then you guys also said, we take it a step further and we wrap security around it. Let's talk about, as AI is being adopted and you're putting it in the cloud, and this goes for both Dylan and Jonathan. One, how are we securing it? And then what are you doing that's so special from the DBA service to help protect that? Because I think that's a unique and different conversation. A lot of customers struggle with adopting a cloud, struggle with how to protect it, and struggle with the database because their database guy left. And then they need someone to help secure it better.
Yeah, so from like a tactical perspective, I think it's a really interesting time to be managing a data warehouse or a data lake or really however you're putting your data into a relational schema. We have all of this flurry of options, whether you're using an AWS product or an Azure product, for example. My team specifically has leaned heavy into Azure SQL, which is sort of like a headless offering that uses some of the intrinsic feature set in the Azure platform to be able to allow me to control security parameters. So I like to think of everything sort of in the lens of like, who are you, where are you, what are you, how are you? So like, who is the user that's in need of accessing this data set? what of the data set they need to access. So can I reduce the scope down to just the as needed data? Um, how are you? Is my device compliant? Is my EDR active, or has it been disabled? Things of that nature, connecting from my endpoint. And then what are you like? What is my job function? What is my purpose to be accessing this data? So, that lens, or those four pillars, allow me to really kind of frame anything that I'm doing from a security perspective in a defensive strategy. So on the notion of database administration or securing data structures, um, moving the lift and shift from on-prem to cloud really opens up a lot of doors for some of those features that are just built into the platform. I think that in terms of a cloud migration, there's a lot to consider in terms of, do you lift and shift? Do you do segmentation into some of these as a service products? And once you've kind of decided what that journey looks like for you, the scope of security does change meaningfully. The more you shift to the microservice model and the as a service model, the more you can rely on some of the platform-based security measures.
I love it. Thanks. So I'm watching in the chat. One, we're talking about GRC, governance, risk, compliance. Then I started thinking about DLP and data discovery, which is DLP, data loss prevention, your data moving. Data discovery, your data is sitting at rest. We have lots of different ways that we need to protect organizations. I'm glad you guys showcased compliance on here. Then we start to think about CMMC. And only 4% of organizations that need to be CMMC are actually CMMC compliant. So there's a big opportunity. And what we've always tried to do from a security standpoint is show you stats, show you why it's relevant, show you why you need to have those conversations, and then point out ways that will differentiate you on things that your clients are actually talking about. So Justin, Dylan, Justin, and Jonathan, let's talk about GRC. So first off, we know that governance is super huge in AI. We need to make sure that we have frameworks and things in place because people aren't following them. The risk is being driven down by the board more than ever. So there's lots of opportunities to see that we need to put more risk measures in place and help get that information back to the board and senior leadership because they want to do that. We need to worry about data loss prevention. And Justin, you talked about how that's being a huge topic, identifying all that personable, identifiable information, seeing it not only in motion, but also at rest for organization. And then let's get into what are you guys doing for CMMC and why is that so important? And do you have an initiative that you can utilize to help get people CMMC certified so that they will pass their audits?
Ricardo, you want me to take this one?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So I think with the governance risk compliance package, Jason, it's all about creating a programmatic approach to these things, right? I see a lot of the comments in the chat on specific topics. So you see things in there around auditing, you see things around basically compliance related issues like you're talking about CMMC. I think it's more about building the program around it to make sure that when the time comes to file for compliance or some type of audit that will give you a CMMC certification, that you're ready to do that. So ECI ourselves does not do CMMC certifications, right? Like we can't CMMC certify you. I think that's in the roadmap, but we'd have to have a deeper conversation with Chad Fullerton around that, the guy who runs that program. But as of now, it's helping you prepare for CMMC. We ourselves are CMMC level 1 and 2, and we're implementing those controls and access to ensure that our customers, when they go to be certified, are, hitting the mark. But the program itself, the GRC program, is pretty ad hoc. It's built out to the needs of the particular client. It can do everything from build and maintain policies through responding to those audits, due diligence questionnaires, tabletop exercises. It's built to service the customer regardless of what their regulatory requirements are. Obviously, growing up in the financial services space like we did, we work with a lot of private equity firms, hedge funds. So we're very, very astute at SEC, FINRA, NYDFS, global ones like DORA, and anything around GDPR. Really, really good. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a high level overview. Again, if you want to jump into any of the bullet points on this solutions overview page, or perhaps take demos, reach out to me and we can put you with the subject matter experts there. I think it would be valuable for anybody interested in GRC to sit down with Chad. He does a particularly great job at running through the platform.
So we have a couple of minutes left, and I know Doug has some questions from the chat, and I appreciate all the activity in the chat. I wanted to showcase, a couple things. One, you guys are one of the only providers in the portfolio doing passwordless identity and access management, which I think is absolutely amazing. 60% of organizations are looking to adopt a passwordless style of identity and access management to make sure that employees aren't putting the same passwords repetitively over and over again, which I think is huge. Help desk, you guys want a massive deal that, you want to, Justin, showcase this real quick, and then I want to let Doug get into some questions. You guys have won quite a few pretty large deals recently, and I think help desk support, outsourcing, and relying on ECI has been part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll quickly go through this one. Bricado and Dylan were both a part of this deal as well. So just a very large record label. The partner, the TA, is based in Atlanta. Obviously, with some of the folks on the call not being under NDA with ECI specifically, we can't share specific names of customers or the agents. But the total contract value was just over $7 million. We were competing against some pretty reputable and name brands in the channel space that you would definitely know. I think why they went with ECI ultimately is because of the scale of our business. This customer needed on-site support in Berlin, in Australia, all across the US in 4 different places, 2 places in the UK, and we were able to staff those roles full time for them. That was a big component of it. They really liked our cyber offering. Jonathan was, doing cyber demos of our XDR platform and the SOAR piece many times, and still working with their cyber team today. They really liked our ability to do FinOps and multi-cloud support, which is where Dylan and his team came into play. That was, they have presences in Azure and AWS. How do we better make those communicate? How do we make sure that the licensing is all correct? They are 800 users. They grow pretty frequently through M&A, making sure that they're getting the best out of all of their licensing costs and utilization in the cloud. We offered them a semi-dedicated support desk. They were very big on their end user experience. So they didn't want to be part of a fully shared services model, but they didn't want to have to pay for a fully dedicated model. So what we did there was we put them in a semi-dedicated position, which is a smaller pod of 16 engineers to provide 24/7, 365 help desk who only work on 2 or 3 clients. This way, there's some continuity in the people that are supporting the end users at this firm, and there's familiarity there. And then can you scroll down just a little? I have it blocked on the bottom.
Oh yeah,
I think that covers everything. I mean, like, one more thing to touch on there is the enterprise network and system services, which is particularly unique to ECI, I feel. That's more of a NOC as a service, right? It's like a co-managed environment where our internal IT teams and their internal IT teams get to use and see the same tools. And it's pretty infrastructure agnostic, right? Having grown through acquisition like they did, there was a lot of legacy tech debt that their old service provider wasn't able to monitor or support, which we were able to do and start road mapping towards getting them to be very cutting edge in those technologies.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Doug. I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but please keep questions coming in the chat, and both ECI and Level Blue will continue to answer those.
We are running a little bit short on time, but I did want to make sure that we covered 1 or 2 things quickly that summarize a few of the questions that we had. A lot of comments, of course, about just integrations with various platforms. I know there were some specific questions around CRM type platforms, Salesforce and others. Let's first take a look at the importance of that type of integration and where the vulnerabilities exist, and then how ECI solutions can address those.
Or I can take that. So in general, I'll answer the question, but also just note that, it is part of a sum, right? So whatever CRM you might be using, it's going to be useful and meaningful data signal coming into a bigger, more comprehensive security lens. So the data coming from your CRM, data coming from your databases, data coming from your cloud solutions is all relevant in context within itself. So when we talk about a threat actor potentially attacking a CRM, the things that are going to be relevant really are the access methods, the exposure and RBAC policies around, what are you giving your users access to? There's a little bit of governance in hardening those platforms, which we can certainly assist in kind of guiding in a positive direction. Certainly gathering that data for logging and authentication and access into a single pane of glass is important. It's always beneficial, or we always recommend building a SAML integration with your IDP to be able to get those logs through like a single stream. And I just say in general, again, it can't be overstated that focusing on securing like one particular platform is the tunnel vision that ends up making organizations overlook, the bigger picture. It's just that it's all valuable under context. Everything that we do, looking at the entire digital footprint is paramount to success.
Jonathan, you used a phrase earlier, weaving security through everything that we do at ECI. And that just really hit me as that would be a brilliant way for our advisors to think about their relationship with their clients and how they present these types of solutions in all of the interactions that they have with their clients.
Yeah, it's something that we need to think about in anything that we do because you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So if you're securing, 3 of your 5 platform technologies, your area of exposure is focused in the 2 that you might have overlooked. So back to the analogy with, or back to the scenario with the CRM, if we're so focused on, securing or hardening the CRM and not so focused on, identity and access management for, Exchange Online or Google Workspace or something like that, we're suddenly, getting too in the weeds with one thing and not the other. So it really has to be a minimum requirement for really any technology or tech debt that we end up taking on.